5 tips to create landing pages that actually convert. So our tip number 1, and this is kind of like an overarching tip that you need to keep in mind on almost every aspect of your funnel design, is visual hierarchy, which is making it easy on the user's eyes with a clear path to follow. So you're almost going to be using your design on the page to direct the user's eyes on a path that you want them to follow so that they digest information in the right order. So really quickly, I want you guys to look at these 2 images and compare these 2 and kind of think in your head, like, what's different between these 2 images? And I'll leave it up for like 5-6 seconds so you guys can get a good look at it. So you guys can see it's a guy dancing with a girl in like this stone brick path right here. So what you guys should have noticed is that on the image on the left, it's very unclear what the focus is. Like on your initial glance of that image, you don't know what the focus of that image is. The subject, which is this guy and this girl, are very muddled into the background, and nothing draws your eyes into a certain focal point. So it's very ambiguous, the image as a whole. Compared to the one on the right, it's very clear what the subject of the image is. The brightest colored thing on the entire image, the first thing that stands out, is this guy and this girl dancing on this brick path. This couple stands out from the background and they draw your eyes in. So obviously it's in a very basic sense, but the same principle applies to your funnel designs. You want to make sure you're using this principle to direct the user's attention to wherever you want at what time. So I'm going to just check the chat to see if there's any questions really quick. Okay. And yeah, that's almost like a pattern interrupt in a way. So your most important content on the page should be the biggest with the most contrast. And yes, Vlad, I'll give Omar the link to this presentation so you guys can get this yourselves. Your most important content should be the biggest with the most contrast. So just like kind of in that image that we saw earlier, that couple wasn't necessarily big on the image, but it had the most contrast, which made you immediately look at that. So let's look at some examples of what I mean. One way to accomplish visual hierarchy is size, right? Very simple. The bigger something is, the more likely you are to notice that first. So in the header, you always want your headline in the header to be as big as possible compared to the rest of the page, because that's always the first thing the user is going to see. On top of that, the image in the header should also be very big and very bold so that it stands out to the user. Because like I said, as soon as they land on this page, you need them to understand and digest what you have to show them, what information you're trying to relay to them. So make sure that the things that are most important on the page, you have the biggest size. Number 2 is subject versus background. This is just like what I just showed you in that image, right? Making sure that the subject stands out from the background, whether that's through colors, like as you can see in this example right here, the subject, I made them like a red and black kind of duotone color on them. Compared to the grayed out background, it makes them stand out immediately because they stand out very strongly from the background. So always keep in mind like how whatever image or graphic or whatever you're putting on, how that stands out from the background, because you need to have enough contrast where the user is going to see that first. Number 3 is depth. Depth meaning shadows, right? As you can see, I have 3 square boxes here. They all have different shadows. The first one has no shadow. Second one has like a stronger shadow. And the third one has a stronger but smaller shadow. So the way this kind of works is the closer something is to you, the more likely you're to notice that first. Like, for example, if I was to put my hand in front of your face like this, like directly like 2 inches in front of your face, obviously the first thing you're going to look at is my hand, right? Because that's what's closest to your face. Same thing applies on web design, landing page design. Yeah, and you guys can hear me, right? I saw Rishal said he can't hear anything. Just want to make sure that everyone can hear me. If you guys can put a 1 if you can hear me. Okay, Vlad says he can hear well. Okay. Okay, so I guess the sound is fine then. Okay, yeah, you guys can hear it. Yeah, Rishal, I'll try reloading the page. So the things that are most important should look as if they're farthest off the page. Like if you have like for example, like a flat plane like this, the things that are furthest off of it are the things that will get your attention the quickest. And this middle shadow is the one that gives the impression that this is as far from the flat plane as possible. Compared to the image on the left, it's part of the same plane because there's no shadow. And compared to the image on the right, that one looks as if it's like a piece of paper sitting on this rather than standing off, right? So things that are most important, you want sticking out as much as possible towards your face as the viewer of the screen, which is done through depth as in shadows. And fourth is contrast. So like the difference between one thing and something else, right? As you can see right here, both of these different headline and subheadline, or headline and body text, they both say the same exact thing, but on the top, the headline is much bigger than the paragraph text, which immediately makes your eyes draw towards this first. On the second one, we accomplish that same kind of thing because your eyes still go to this before it goes to this, and that's done through contrast of boldness. This one is much thicker and a more opaque, I think I'm using that word right, the more opaque color than the text under it. Even though the text is the same exact size, it's thicker, it's more white, and it stands out more. And this one is done through sizing. So using those four things, size, the subject versus background, depth, and contrast, you got to make sure that all the elements on your page, you're treating them accordingly on how important they are and using these things to either make them more important or less important. And kind of a good way to think of that is even like, for example, like on a lot of these courses these days, like let's say there's a guy selling a course saying, oh, make $10,000 in your first week of doing Facebook ads. At the very bottom of the page, they'll have in very small text and grayed out text, we are not affiliated with Facebook. None of the claims on here are income claims, blah, blah. And they make it as unnoticeable as possible because they don't want your attention there. The same thing applies to the things that you want people to give their attention to. You make those the biggest and the boldest with the most contrast.